My name is Katrina. I'm with the Michigan Opioid Collaborative, and today we have Laura Thomas presenting for us on motivational interviewing. The Michigan Opioid Collaborative has committed to doing a monthly webinar series, so we hope you'll join us for more webinars in the future. Everyone will be muted during the presentation. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end. Also, if everyone could sign in on the chat box with their name and email address so we know who's attending. If you would like to receive information on future webinars, you can indicate that also in the chat box. So I will go ahead and introduce our speaker, Laura Thomas. So Laura is a licensed clinical social worker and a project manager at the University of Michigan and the Department of Veterans Affairs. She has been working in opioid-focused research with Dr. Bonner since 2013 and has conducted brief motivational interviewing-based interventions on research studies in the emergency department, addiction treatment facilities, and primary care clinics. She has trained and supervised others in motivational interviewing-focused interventions for opioid safety, both within the research projects and non-research community organizations. The projects she has worked on span across the University of Michigan and the Department of Veterans Affairs to increase opioid safety and reduce overdose risk behaviors while incorporating motivational interviewing and harm reduction. So I will turn it over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Katrina. Thanks everyone for coming today too. It's a beautiful day, so I appreciate you guys not taking your lunch outside, and maybe some of you are outside that you don't have your videos on, so good for you. So like Katrina said, for anyone who just joined, if you could put your name and email address in the chat so that they can track who's joined and follow up with you. And then here is some codes. So there's the one on the left is for the CMEs if you need those. And if anyone is a social worker and needs CEUs, those will be sent out by the BHCs after the webinar. And feel free to reach out if you don't get any of this afterwards. All right, so today, like I'm sure a lot of you know, we're going to be talking about motivational interviewing and affirmations. So we're going to be spending half of the time talking about education and the rest of the time talking about practice. I'm Laura Thomas. I'm also a MINT member, which means I've been trained in the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. And this presentation was developed in collaboration with my coworker, Tim Shrucraft, and my other coworker, Sarah Marasco. So you guys all shared, not everyone, but a lot of people shared some ideas about affirmations already. So thinking about affirmations as identifying and verbalizing true, accurate, resiliency building statements and characteristics and or resources inherent to a person, their uplifting messages, emotional support. I love Courtney Edgar mentioned positive messages for yourself or someone else. Always need affirmations for ourselves too. Encouraging statements. It provides verbal encouragement in a given situation, a form of acceptance. It's a way to like counteract the negative pattern thinking. You guys are right in tune with what we're going to talk about. So hopefully this is just further practice and further rethinking about how we can apply affirmations in different situations. So the plan today is to talk about a little brief introduction to motivational interviewing, thinking about person-centered care in the MI spirit, and then affirmations, and then practicing. All right, so motivational interviewing. There's 3 different definitions that the motivational interviewing book uses, thinking about overall that it is a collaborative conversation style that you can have with a person. And really it's thinking about any kind of goal that they're working towards and working to strengthen their own personal motivation for and commitment to that goal. And thinking about it in an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. And then person-centered care. So motivational interviewing, like we just saw with those definitions, is very person-centered, like it's pulling out from the person what they know. Most of us are in healthcare or patient care because we care about other people and their well-being. And so motivational interviewing just further builds on that. We think about how people are experts on themselves. They know what would work best for them. They have their own strengths, their own motivations and resources that are vital in order to help them make whatever change they're thinking about. It also emphasizes the partnership, that it empowers them to take on things, and there's only so much we can give people too. A lot of times it's already there, and people make their own decisions about what to do. So just thinking about like this person-centered model or approach to talking with individuals when we're thinking about affirmations. So along with that person-centered approach, motivational interviewing, in the third edition of their book, Miller and Rolnick, who are the founders of MI, found that they were teaching us MI and how to use MI, like the OR skills or different other practices. And it was as if they taught us the words, not the music, to motivational interviewing. So this idea of the MI spirit kind of helps us make it more of a way to help people think through change and how it would be realistic in their life to approach it. So we do evoking. So we find the person's own strengths and own resources to change. A lot of times people already know what they have to do in order to implement the change. So we just really are trying to strategically pull that out from them. It's a partnership. So it's not done at someone, it's done for or with someone. Very collaborative approach. And acceptance too. So there's these 4 aspects of acceptance: that someone has absolute worth, that they are a worthy person. They have autonomy to choose whether or not they do something or implement a change in their life. There's also accurate empathy. So truly understanding that person as much as we can, and then affirming any choices that they make. And then compassion. So just actively promoting the other's welfare and giving priority to their needs. So again, embodying that person-centered approach. So like I mentioned, affirmations kind of come into motivational interviewing through the MI spirit. So it's one of the 4 aspects of acceptance, in which the counselor or provider or whatever role you're in, it could even be friend, accentuates the positive, seeking and acknowledging a person's strengths and efforts. And Katrina, I will definitely share the PowerPoint slides later. There's a couple spots where we all will answer together, and so it will be helpful for you guys to see like all the answers that you come up with later. So I will definitely do that for you guys. So affirmations also comes into motivational interviewing through ORs. Excuse me. ORs is a motivational interviewing skill, or like way in order to engage people with open questions, affirmations, reflections, and summary. So affirming reflections or affirmations is a statement in which you're valuing a positive attribute or behavior of a person. And it's almost a way of thinking. It's a very strengths-based approach where you're listening to a person and seeing what kind of stories they're sharing or experiences that they have, or even seeing how they show up to your appointments, and finding the strengths, the good steps, and intention. And it's really anything that they're doing, no matter how big or how small that thing is, that we want to emphasize it and celebrate it. And one of the reasons why we want to do this is to just help the person build up their own confidence and realizing that they do have the strengths and they do have everything within them to take on these challenges or the change that they're thinking about exploring. So if we think about the opposite of affirmations, it's when we search for what is wrong with people and we've identified it and we tell them how to fix it. Like, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And let me tell you, like, A is the best way to do that. And then you have to do B, and then you have to do C, which is what you have to do. There's this idea that people will change if you can just make them feel bad enough. And making people feel terrible doesn't help them to change. There was a study done on people with driving while intoxicated charges who were randomly assigned to attend a public presentation by Mothers Against Drunk Drivers or not attend that presentation. And so recidivism rates were equal among both groups. And at the same time, those with more than one prior offense were actually more likely to repeat the offense if they attended the presentation. So again, just reiterating, like, making people feel terrible or shaming them is not an effective tool, and it doesn't help them change. It actually tends to cause them to feel bad and unacceptable, and helps them, or like, encourages them to like entrench or like dig their heels in with the status quo. It's already feeding into like their own negative self-talk and lack of confidence. I know I personally have that in certain things. And so if someone were to tell me all these shameful things I'm doing, then that's just going to feed into why I can't even take on the new challenge or the new change that we're talking about. So it's when people experience acceptance of themselves as they are, that they're able to think more and be more confident in their ability to make a change. So we talked a little bit about this, but I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on other benefits that could come from affirming people. You want to unmute yourself or put it in the chat and I can summarize it.
Hello, this is Katrina.
Hi, Katrina.
I think there's a lot of benefit in affirming people's what they can identify themselves with your help as those things that are positive and resiliency factors and just some strengths. I think that part of where we get, you know, the term affirmations can sometimes be considered like positive and bright and cheery. And so I think it's really important that people believe it, because if they don't actually believe it and they're reaching for the sky, but then they have this other voice going, yeah, right, then it's not going to be very helpful. It can actually be kind of hurtful. So having them be really true and making sure the person 100% believes the affirming statement is pretty helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's part of it too, is like if we keep pointing out or like trying to affirm people without being too much like a cheerleader, right? Like not like being fake or disingenuous. You want to be authentic when you're doing these affirmations. And some folks in the chat too have great points. So building self-esteem and their own self-worth, that they do have the capacity and the strength to do these. Just an overall idea of positive thoughts, more good that comes in and the more good that you can put out. Optimism, hope, genuine care, concern, compassion, fantastic. Making people or helping people believe in themselves, right? So that's part of the MI spirit too of evoking. So a lot of times, traditionally, we go to a doctor and think that they're the expert. And so we have to just listen to what they say. But a lot of times when a doctor recommends something for you, you have already thought about all those different options yourself, or you've heard other people. And so helping people realize that they have it within themselves to help them make a change. Yeah, and sometimes, especially if you're in that idea that you don't have any worth or you have a negative self-talk, you may have overlooked or not viewed something as a strength. Exactly, Laura. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. You guys are, I mean, I don't know why you guys are here other than thanks for hanging out with me on a Friday. So this is just further affirming what you guys have already said. So there was a study done with 92 college students who were using alcohol in a harmful way. And they did a motivational interviewing session, or they participated in a motivational interviewing session with a counselor. And those sessions were recorded and then coded to see if there are any trends in therapist language and participant language. And so they actually found that affirmations were the only thing that were found to increase change talk and decrease sustained talk among college students. So just as a reminder, change talk is anything that the person expresses as language that is an argument for change. And this tends, obviously, to predict improved outcomes. Versus sustained talk is when they're digging in their heels, right? They voice their own concern or the arguments for not changing or sustaining the status quo, which understandably predicts poorer outcomes. So just even affirming people, like you guys have all said, it kind of increases your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-worth. And so that I think that there's a study to be done to show us proof, right, and evidence. And I think it makes complete sense that it helps us to take on change. Other positive functions, like you guys have all mentioned, really, engagement. So people are more likely to be engaged in treatment, stay in treatment for longer, reduce defensiveness if they come up against any of it, if you have to share any threatening information, or if they just experience threatening information in their life, it kind of increases their openness to hearing that and facing it. It helps facilitate change. It helps people, like you guys have said, recognize their own strengths, intentions, and actions. We're pulling it out and shining a different light on it, and that's helping them view it differently themselves too. And helps both bolster hope, confidence within that person. And the statement down here too from the MI book, I think, again, all of this just kind of makes sense, right? Like people are more likely to spend time with people who they trust, who listen to them and are open, if other people recognize and affirm their strengths. Also, thanks, Katrina. I'm glad you find it enjoyable to hang out. So there's a way that we can affirm with statements, and then there's also a way that we can elicit affirmations from people. So we could have people think of their own things that they're good at and accomplishments that they've had. So we could identify and affirm strengths that they've had. We can review past successes that they've done. We can do an exercise of brainstorming where we really generate as many ideas as possible for how a change may be accomplished. We could reframe. So someone mentioned in the chat, like thinking, like reframing how someone says something. So they may think of something negatively, but we can reframe it in a more positive light. And then hypothetical thinking too. So future thinking, like suppose you did succeed and you're looking back, like what most likely is it that worked for you? If it's all right with you guys, I would love to kind of find out like your own words on how we could do this. So there's some examples over here, though I find a lot of times with research manuals or with even textbook examples, they tend to be very like robotic and not genuine. So these are some ways you could dig for self-affirmations within the client. So what is something you achieved this week? What are your strengths? What are some things that you have succeeded at in the past? But how would you guys word these? Like what are ways that you guys, it feels more natural for you to get at strengths, to get at successes that they've had in the past? And I will type them in here too. So we have them and I can send them along to you afterwards.
How in the world did you overcome that? To be sitting here and talking to me today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So recognize that they've taken on so many challenges and obstacles that it's just, yeah, it's a miracle that they're here and that they had the whatever to get through here, right? Great. Mm-hmm. So when you hear something, Megan, it's kind of like, just tell me more about that. Okay, so Dorothy mentions using the tell me kind of helps people answer more instead of using the what are. I think that makes complete sense. I definitely agree with the what are kind of makes it feel like more like an interview. Like I'm asked like, what are my strengths and weaknesses? And then I feel like I'm not going to get the job when it's like, you're just trying to have a conversation with this person. So what feels more genuine and conversational than a job interview?
I might ask them about their bounce back ability. So,
Okay.
you know, wow, it seems like you have just been through some amazing things. How in the world do you bounce back up?
Mm-hmm. Great. Any other ones? We have plenty of time to think through other ones, but this could just be a good exercise too for you to think through. Because I know sometimes being in these things, especially because it's recorded, can be stressful. So whatever works for you, thinking about how to ask these questions and kind of dig in with the people that you're working with to figure out what are their own self-affirmations that you could have them vocalize instead of you assigning it or reflecting back what you are seeing. So just some more points on affirmation. So affirming is, like you guys have all shown in your examples, is focusing on that person. So there is a difference between affirming and praising. A praise tends to be like, I'm proud of you. So I want to like kind of put a caveat with I'm proud of you. I was talking with a coworker, and with some folks that you work with, they may have never heard I'm proud of you. So if you've been working with someone and you feel like your relationship is in a place that you could say that and it wouldn't come off as like parental tones or like I'm the expert, I know everything and you don't, there's definitely room for that. And there's a couple examples in the later slides too that use I statements that don't have that parental tone. So you can use I statements, but just like kind of listen to what you're doing. Notice, recognize, and acknowledging the positive in the folks. Any kind of positive, like no matter how big or small. So again, just strengths-based. Like people have strengths in everything that they're doing. So it's just trying to dig in for those. Comment on intentions and actions too, like even showing up to your telehealth appointment, to your regular appointment, even if they're late, like they still got there, right? They still were resourceful in getting there. Reframing the person's actions or situation in a positive light, and just finding the best way to convey to this person your genuine appreciating, prizing, and positive regard. And genuine is just a huge point here, because people, it just comes off as sarcastic if you're not genuine about it. Courtney mentions that they've used metaphors with clients and have connected with a client in the past. They love cats and are curious and loving. I once said she's like a cat because she's loving and just wants to feel that love as well. She connected so well at affirmation. That's fantastic. That's great. And so some clients too are strong and positive like a phoenix and keep rising up. Great. Yeah, and then David, you sent that directly to me, so let me know if it's okay for me to share that with the group too. I don't want to share something if you're not comfortable with it too.
Yes, you may share it.
Thank you. So David shared that a client cried once when I told him I was proud of him. He said no one had ever said that to him before. So again, that's an example where that is something that works, right? And it helps build that relationship more. So don't never use I am proud of you, just kind of understand the situation. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So some more examples of, or some examples of affirmation. So like we talked about, just even affirming action. So people tried hard this week, right? Like even if they don't succeed at whatever they were doing, like they even tried this week. It didn't turn out as they hoped, but their intention was really good. They came into the appointment, even arrived early. They feel bad about their use this week, but what strikes me is how different this was from where you started 2 months ago. So even recognizing how much of a shift there may have been from when you first started working with this person or from what they previously shared with you. You got really discouraged and still you came back, so you're persistent. You're trying to do a good job and sort out what's maybe the best way for you to make it work. You can stand up for yourself. Another thing similar to what I believe Katrina mentioned, if I were in your shoes, I don't know how I could have managed nearly so well. There's a couple other ones. So I don't, if you guys caught that. So this one is like an I statement down here. Like, I don't know if I could have done it, but it doesn't come off as like parental tones. It's also like, it's encouraging that the person, like, you're here, like you've like been through all of this and you're still here and talking to me at this time too, right? Here's another one that uses an I statement, but still is affirming to the person. You're amazingly resourceful. I can't believe how strong you are to have been through all of that and even be alive, let alone sitting here and talking to me about how you want your life to be in the future. I don't think I could have survived what you've been through. I also like these two examples here because they're kind of when a client may be pushing back against you and you may be like, okay, you may like be thinking in your head that this is like a difficult person, but thinking about how to pull the strengths out of that interaction, right? So like, I can do this on my own without your help. Like, yeah, once you make up your mind about something, you can get it done. You've done it in the past. You don't know what you're talking about is when the client says that to you and you say, you've really thought this through and you know what you need in order to get through this. What are some other favorite affirmations? So you guys mentioned earlier your thoughts on how to dig for affirmations, but what are some that you have heard or used yourself?
I think that one's harder to come up with because if they're genuine, they tend to be pretty snowflake oriented based on the person.
That's a great point.
In the
Yeah.
absence of that person, it's difficult. But sometimes people don't find, certain things I might find incentivizing, like verbal praise or things other people might not find incentivizing based on their history, if there's been trauma or different things. So I think it's important to figure out before you use the affirmations, what is going to be tailored to that person.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's helpful to think through these and practice it, but realize that you can't just have like standard statements all the time, right? Like it's helpful to really think specifically about that person and speak to their strengths. So Heather has, I am kind, I am smart, I am honest and strong. I'm focused on today, and today I've done really well. That's great, Katrina. Someone, 9 List Huron, says, I will point out at times that they should be proud of themselves for overcoming A, B, and C. So I would say, you must be really proud of yourself. Great. That kind of comes off too as like reframing, right? That like they may have voiced it as like all of these obstacles and things that have held them back throughout their life. And you could reframe it as like, you must be really proud of yourself that you've done A, B, and C. Great. All right. Great. And then Laura says that they compare a lot about when they were, where they started to where they are now, because clients may not always recognize the progress they've made because they have not yet achieved their overall goal. That's a great point, that their goal may be like complete sobriety or getting a job or X, Y, and Z, but there's so many things that you need in order to get to that point. Great. And using I'm impressed rather than I'm proud to kind of show that like, yeah, I don't know if I could do that if I was in your shoes. Great. So we have a demonstration video. What are you guys' thoughts? You guys seem pretty awesome at affirmations and very familiar with it, and you're really like able to pull out from clients. Do you want to see a role play, or do we want to just go into more practice on our own? While you guys are thinking, Sarah mentioned there's a self-care app on Android Galaxy that has I am affirmations, and they're sent to the phone. That's great. Kind of another way to reaffirm to yourself, or that clients could download too. All right. We've got 2 people saying role play. So let's go over there. Hold on a second.
Next, you'll see a video demonstration of
Can you hear this? Good.
MI used with a client who's leaving an opiate detox program. His interviewer is introducing the possibility of beginning Vivitrol, a medication to prevent opiate relapse. An important point to take away from this demonstration is the tension between the goal, the aspiration of the interviewer, and the autonomy of the client. And that tension is often present in motivational interviewing. The interviewer has a goal, a desire, a belief that Vivitrol will be helpful for the client. But he also seeks to support the client's autonomy and choice in making that decision. Watch that tension as it's played out in this interview.
So you've mentioned that this has been the longest that you've been sober in a long time. So I guess the first thing I want to say is congratulations on that. That's not an easy thing to do, to make it 9 days through. And I guess I'm wondering, you know, as people get towards the end of their detox, they begin to look at what might be next for them. And I know that your doctor has made some recommendations. He's talked about the possibility of beginning Vivitrol, use of Vivitrol medication to you. And I'm wondering what you've been thinking about that.
I don't know about Vivitrol. Like, I hear good things, but also I hear a lot of that stuff doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure about it. And it's scary because I don't know what's going to happen, because I got prescribed opiates. And that's how this all started.
Yeah.
And now the doctor wants to prescribe me this other medication, and I feel like, okay, here we go again.
Boy, I've done this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to go through getting addicted to another thing. I'm just barely just getting clean right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really want to make sure that this time you're making a decision that you are informed about, that you understand what's involved, and that you're really, you know, this time moving in a direction that you want to move in. And that's really great. It's really, you know, this, I can tell that you're sort of taking this really seriously, and this is an important decision for you.
So I'm just going to stop it there. So what are you guys' thoughts on that? Like any affirming reflection that you heard, or anything that you would do differently too, right? That's the thing with these role play or demonstration. They're not always perfect, and we could definitely do something different if we wanted to.
It was wonderful that he like validated that the client was able to remain sober for 9 days.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would do a little different would be at the end, I wouldn't, when he used affirmation, I wouldn't use I to make it, you know, put constant focus on me, but the client himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so where he said, I can tell you're taking this very serious, you can just say, like, you are taking this very seriously. So it's not putting, like, my perception of you in there.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then we have validation, validates the client and the ambivalence, right? So like the client's kind of like pushing back, but instead of arguing the other side and forcing the client, recognizing that the client has affirmations, or is like kind of in control of what happens next. Yeah, and so Courtney mentions it seems genuine, contained affirmations in a way we don't usually think of. So very natural, and we weaved right into the conversation exactly. Yeah, he pushed quickly for the Vivitrol, and recognizing that it's really up to the client. Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. And there's the link for this full video, as well as a lot of other MI videos that I will send along in the slides, so that you guys can finish watching this if you want to and take a critical look at it, or see some other examples too. Let's see. There we go. All right, so now we're going to practice. Let me send in the chat. We have a worksheet, but we'll also practice it on the screen too. And we can send this around afterwards too. So there's that link there that will go to a PDF that you can open up and take notes along with this, or you can use it later on if you want to practice afterwards. So thinking about forming affirmations, just in general, like you guys have already pointed out, and someone mentioned, I'm sorry, I can't see everyone's names when they unmute themselves, but someone mentioned it's almost like a snowflake, right? Like each person is individual, that you may not have blanket affirmations that you use with everyone. So don't overthink it. Don't spend too much time on it. Start with a you, and then speak any characteristic or any strength that you notice, and just like we mentioned, be on the lookout for any kind of affirmations throughout your interactions with folks. There's this website too, and I can send you guys this link and we can also share it at the end. But just in case you guys want this up while we're practicing, let me send you this link as well. So this is just 100 characteristics of successful changers that Bill Miller, one of the founders of motivational interviewing, came up with. So this is kind of a great way to think through different strengths that people have or in ways that you could reflect on that. Especially if you're getting used to doing affirmations or you're having someone that you are kind of stuck in this idea that they're a difficult client and you don't know what to say, like it could be helpful to think through this a little bit more. Right, so this is our first situation. So if we want to just, I can read this out loud for folks. So this is a young man who stands before the juvenile justice judge for the third time in less than a year. And while I'm reading this, if you want to think through any strengths, and then we can put it in the chat and I can add it to the slide. So this young man was arrested for possession of marijuana. He was hanging out with a group of other young people experiencing homelessness when some college students started hassling them. He jumped in and a brawl ensued. As the police arrived and broke up the fight, his bag of weed fell out of his pocket, and he takes an insolent attitude in the courtroom every time he is there. The tiny URL did not work. I can send you just the full link. I was trying to make it easier, but here's the full link too, if that works better for you. So what are some strengths of this person? So this young man who goes to the court regularly, gets into fights. I'm trying to pull out all like the negative things about this person so that we can think about strengths that they have. Faithful friend, Descends friends, right.
He seems like he has a strong value on championing for the underdog. Kind of a hero.
Not afraid. Advocate for others. Someone said shows up to court. That's great. So yeah, it says that he takes an insolent attitude, but like he's still showing up. Let's see, courageous. Those are work in the making, fantastic. All right, so we have all these great strengths about this person, right? So we see this thing that could be perceived as like a negative situation. This person is just lost and there's nothing that we can do to save them, right? So like, how can we affirm based on these strengths or based on anything else that you're reading in here? How can we affirm this person? I noticed you have a strong sense of what is right. Great. Man, this is testing my own skills here. All right, can't talk and type and look at stuff at the same time. So I noticed you have a strong sense of what is right. It takes a lot to stand up for others. I'm impressed you were able to do that. I can appreciate your loyalty to your friends. Yep, so this person cares for their friends, believes in standing up for what you think is right. Great. I also have, one of my thoughts is you're resourceful in getting to court whenever you have a hearing. Like if this person's experiencing homelessness, like I don't know what their transportation looks like or their financial situation. So the fact that they're able to show up every time. Awesome. Okay, great. Let's go to the next one here. So we have Bill Bob is pre-contemplative with regard to his polysubstance use disorder, as well as mental health concerns. He recently lost his job because he showed up to work intoxicated, and his partner ended their relationship because he refused to seek some form of treatment. He was evicted because he decided not to pay his rent or bills and is living in a hotel still using substances. He has no plan and is not interested in solutions-oriented discussion at this point. So what are some things that could be strengths of Bill Bob? Great, Sheila. Yeah, he's a survivor. I was thinking too, while some folks are, yes, that's what I was thinking too, Edward. He was able to show up to work. Yep. Ooh, picking all these long words. That's a lot to type out here. Keeping himself in a hotel or with a roof over his head. Yep. Great. So how about some affirmation that we could use for Bill Bob? Some of these are actually already, to me, come off as affirmations too. So just that genuine like amazement, right? That it's amazing you are here after all you've gone through. I think that feeds into Adlin's mention too, that like this person's even showing up to their appointments, right? Like that's huge, even if they state that they're pre-contemplative. Yeah. So you had a job and you were able to like almost be independent or not depend on other people. Interviewing, job skills, relationships. Yeah. Katrina, how could we form that into a affirmation, or anyone else too, right? So that's the cool thing about these groups, or like not being on the spot with a client, is that we can all see this. So Katrina wrote in here, he has more skills than he recognizes and can dust them off whenever he wants to. Interviewing, job skills, relationships. Great. So that's a good option, Sheila. Do you realize you have more skills than you may recognize? And then probably won't say EG out loud, but interviewing, job skills, relationships. Yes, you are coming to the table with a lot of tools already. Awesome. Fantastic. And like we're thinking about too, like people may not see this, right? Like Bob is stating to us that he's pre-contemplative. He feels like everything has gone wrong because he showed up work intoxicated, his partner ended the relationship, he got evicted, right? And so saying this stuff may not be perceived right away or accepted right away, but I think just even planting the seed so that when this person, like Bill Bob, for example, is ready to talk more or just engage in more support, that they know that they can come to you. It's kind of the thing that we were talking about earlier, just that people are more likely to retain in treatment or stay in treatment or come back if they have this positive experience. We're also getting close to time. I don't have much left, so let's try to do one more. And then the rest of them are for you guys to practice more, or if you think about any other situation too, or if you guys have work groups at work, you can always think of those quote unquote like difficult people, right? Or those people who like you may be hitting a wall with, and just kind of brainstorm different things. And it kind of helps your brain practice how to be a strengths-based approach when you're talking to anyone, really. All right, so let's try this one and then we'll wrap it up. So PD Paul is actively using opioids and meth. He lives with his grandfather and his uncle, and he is his grandfather's primary caretaker. His uncle is verbally abusive, dynamic present since PD Paul was a child. They often use together as his uncle always has meth in the house. PD Paul has been in and out of buprenorphine treatment for a few months now and has had periods of successful cessation of opioids, but not meth. PD Paul wants to stop meth use, but says it's hard because his uncle is using so often. He's agreed multiple times to enter treatment with a plan to move into transitional living afterwards. And he would successfully complete it, but then always move back into the grandfather's house and eventually relapse, first on meth and then on opioids. What do we think are some strengths? Care for others. Yep. I read that too, Sheila, and the fact that he's his grandfather's primary caregiver. PD Paul desires to quit. Loyalty to family. Motivated to try. I love that use too, to like motivated to try to keep quitting, right? So like we don't want to push someone to go all the way to the extreme, but like you're just even thinking about like what it would take to get to that point. Oh, sorry, I missed Adeline. You said willingness, desire to change. Awesome. So how about some affirmations? And I will keep typing in whatever comes in here. How can we affirm PD Paul? You're trying hard to be sober. You are a good grandson to care so much for your grandfather. Great points, yeah. Especially if someone's starting to feel down on themselves and that they have nothing going for them, or it's hard for people to see it in themselves, right? So mentioning you are a great. You're a very strong person. It's so hard to be a caretaker. Great. I also have another one I'm going to type in here. I was thinking, saying like you are persistent in finding something that works for your use of meth. So like it maybe has for your use of opioids, because they've had those periods of cessation of opioids, but not meth yet, but still like interested in doing something. Great. Dorothy, you Great. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you guys, like we talked about, it's really like seeing the situation and kind of just getting that mindset to change like the strengths that we find in people, and hopefully through more practice. So you guys are already just amazing at finding that and being really patient-centered and genuine in all of your statements here. So seeing how that translates if you aren't as used to it to verbally giving these to folks. So I'll send these slides along so you guys can practice the other ones. It's also in that worksheet that we sent along. So if you guys want to share like what a takeaway that you have on affirmations. Building, excuse me. Olson says, building positive regard. Everyone has some good qualities to find, absolutely. Managers search for the positive and strengths related to even the most difficult clients, yeah. It's amazing what just changing even our own mindset, right? And like shifting our brain to think more positively and finding those things in people changes how we interact with folks too. A better understanding of how to focus on a person's strengths and how to peel away things to find the good in everyone. Absolutely. Great. And then maybe you guys are typing still, but also we're going to continue to have MI trainings throughout the year. So if there's anything else that you guys are interested in, we're kind of just doing what we think would be helpful, but it'd be great to hear from you guys what you'd be interested in for another topic and skill. One that we're thinking about is thinking about if you have had an interaction with someone that kind of feels like it's breaking their trust, or you may have said something, because we're all learning and we're all trying to do better, that may have been stigmatizing or harmful to the relationship, like how to back out of that or how to rebuild that relationship. So that's one that we're thinking about doing over the summer. But please share any other ideas, or when the BHCs reach out, if you have any ideas then, like after you've spent some time thinking about it, maybe you don't have anything on your mind right now, but please feel free to share. And then Katrina wants everyone, one of the Katrinas in this group, wants everyone in the chat box to sign in if you haven't already, so we can make sure we follow up with you. Here are the additional resources. So there's the video that I showed you guys. The MI book throughout has a lot of full transcripts with running commentary as to what that thing is. So is it an affirmation? Is it a reflection? Is it whatever? So there's actually an example here on this website of a full transcript that you could read. That link to the some characteristics, the link to the worksheet, and then the MI practice book that is super helpful. Let's see. Thank you everyone for coming. This has been fantastic. You guys, I've learned so much from you guys as much as you guys potentially have taken away from this training too.